Good morning, everyone. Are we live? Am I live? Okay. Good morning. Sorry I'm a couple of minutes late. Timothy Ward already in the house. Thank you ever so much for moderating again, my man. And Jody. Jody, I have a parcel here from you that I'm going to open towards the end of the stream. So thank you very much for that. Can everyone hear me okay? What's that comment about sound? Okay, perfect. Thanks. Got a thumbs up from Scuba Pete. That's good. All right, guys. It's 6 a.m. here in Australia, and I had to get up this morning at about 4:40 to get everything for the live stream ready. Couldn't do it last night because I was desperately trying to get Action Force Part 3 uploaded before I went to bed. That is now available on the Patreon page for early access. Thank you for the super chat, Jody. As usual, no comment. Yeah, I often, if I'm doing the live streams early in the morning, I will often set everything up the night before, but I was just really busy trying to get Action Force Part 3 uploaded and put onto the Patreon page. Everyone else on YouTube will see that video probably about this time tomorrow. So wherever you are in the world, about 24 hours from now is when you'll get Action Force Part 3. It's Michael Herring. I love toys. So do I. That American Kid, good to see you here again. DS Modeler, good to see you. Blue Harvest Vintage Toys, just finished. Oh, you just finished your live stream. That was way too early for me, man. I'm sorry. So yeah, I got up at 4:40. I had a cup of tea, and then I started setting everything up. I have to bring lights up here. I have to bring the table up because it actually normally lives downstairs in the studio. And yesterday it was covered in Action Force Space Force toys. Yeah, we're good to go. Apologies to UK viewers. I know this, and I'm sure I've said this before. I'm just repeating myself, but it's like 11 p.m. in the UK, and I know this isn't an ideal time for you guys, but I'm just really struggling to lock in a different time that suits both American and UK viewers, because I am 12 hours ahead of the east coast of the States. I'm 7 hours ahead of the UK, so this is like the best time slot I can find. And it's hot in here. I've got the aircon on and everything. But DS Modeler, he wonders what surprises Tony has under the table today. I've got a few surprises under the table today. Paul Barry saying it's 10 a.m. in New Zealand, an ideal time for them. That's good, man. Good to see a Kiwi on the live stream. Sergeant Lot 10, I think that's what that name means. I bought a figure that had no lower legs, no head, and only shoulders. I know Cotswold has good parts, but I don't like the heads. Yes, some of the stuff that Cotswold does is good, but if you're into the vintage, like, they don't really produce anything that recaptures that. And if you're looking for something probably cheaper, actually, I don't know if they are cheaper. I was going to say, like, go for 40th anniversary Action Man stuff. It's not, the figures aren't spot on, but they're pretty good. But actually, even those are going up in price. So, Jonathan Burns says he has the 40th anniversary ceremonials. They are getting more and more expensive to acquire, man. Sorry, I just had a Facebook message to read there. Yeah, so and another apology. I'm full of apologies this morning, so I'm apologising to UK viewers. I always want to apologise to the patrons because I normally run a poll on the Patreon page where I give the guys like 4 or 5 topics and they can vote on the discussion topic. The reason I didn't run a poll this week is because I wasn't sure if I could actually lock this time slot in and do the live stream today. So I didn't want you guys wasting your time voting on a live stream that was never going to come to fruition. But fortunately, I was able to lock in the time frame, and here we go. So I picked. So this discussion topic has been on a number of polls, and I'm actually amazed that it's never been picked before. It has been voted very highly, but it's never been fully picked. So yeah, today we're going to talk about the Action Man Ceremonials. Now that's what collectors call these outfits. They call them the Ceremonials. Blue Harvest Vintage Toys. Do you have any spares for a Palitoy Death Star? The plastic bits. I don't have anything from a Palitoy Death Star. Gary's Action Man channel, fine looking 17th, 21st Lancer on the left. Yeah, thank you very much. I purchased that when I went to England on a holiday about 2 years ago, and I went to a toy show in my hometown. It's not a big toy show, just a local Worthing toy show. And I was absolutely amazed. I bumped into Dave Lebec, who anyone from the UK collects Action Man. If you don't know Dave Lebec, get to know him. He sells at all the shows. And he was interviewed and appeared in my Action Man documentary. He was one of the collectors in that. And it was really awesome to just randomly bump into him. I was not expecting to see Dave at that show. And he had this 17th, 21st Lancer that I purchased from him. And he also had a 1960s Action Man Air Police, and I picked that up as well. So, excellent acquisitions. King Eric the Great the First. I'm a fan of the Highlander Black Watch, as I was a Seaforth Highlander. Okay. Yes, thanks, Tim. No conspiracy theories in the discussion, please. We're here to talk Action Man. That American Kid, the gun for the Grenadier Guard. I saw a video of it on Toy Polloi about fixing the tips. They're very fragile, I hear. Tony, did you get yours with or without the barrel? No, mine's complete. But you are correct. The SLR rifles are very prone to having the barrels broken off. In fact, when I was actually repairing them when I was like 12 years old. What I would do would get a section of sprue from a model kit, and rather than actually glue it, I would burn one end with a lighter till it started to melt, and then basically like almost plastic welded it onto the end. And then once it was welded, I'd then go and paint it black. But no, none of these have been broken. In fact, not much here is broken. This plume on this helmet is broken, which I've done a repair to, and quite a few of these have got spurs, and I can't remember which one, but one of them has a broken spur, which I've repaired as well. Oi, oi, the Full Force podcast. Oi, oi, good to see you, Chris. John Kenny, how accurate are the uniforms to the real thing? They're pretty spot on for the time, mate. They are pretty spot on. Yeah, so, Action Man collectors refer to this group, and this isn't the entire group. I couldn't fit everything on the table. I've got a couple more pieces down here to show you. But, yeah, collect. Oh, it's too early for me, man. I need some tea. Collectors refer to this group collectively, if that makes sense, as the Ceremonials, but they were never actually sold by Palitoy as the Ceremonials. These here are what were sold by Palitoy as the famous British regiments, and they didn't just feature ceremonial outfits. They also included the Parachute Regiment, combat uniform, the Royal Marines combat, Royal Marines mounted in Arctic, they did an MP, they did a British officer. So the famous British uniforms range is actually much broader than this, and that's really what these outfits are. The Ceremonials is just I suppose a little bit like Star Wars, where everyone refers to the last 17. You know, they weren't sold as the last 17. That's just what collectors call them now. And these have affectionately become known as the Ceremonials. Gary's Action Man channel says the Ceremonials are works of art, and he is 100% correct. These are works of art, which is why I've often referred to my toy collection as an art gallery because that's how I view my collection. I know a lot of people sort of may refer to their collections a bit like curating a museum, which it kind of is, but for me this is an art gallery, and that's the way I kind of like to display it, like an art gallery. Kieran Ball, are you sure that's just tea in your mug? Yes, it is, mate, because if it wasn't, I'd have some serious issues. It's 6:10 in the morning. Oh, Resolute 123, my buddy Dave. What did you miss? You actually didn't miss much, man. We've been going for 12 minutes, but I've just been apologising to people in the UK, apologising to people on the Patreon, and suppose trying to wake up a little bit. But I can talk for hours about the ceremonials, and I think what we'll do is go through in chronological order as best I can remember of when they were designed and developed. So everything really starts here with this guy, the Grenadier Guard. This was the first ceremonial outfit produced by Palitoy. Oh, Jody, thank you for the super chat, my man. Yeah, this was the first ceremonial uniform ever produced by Palitoy in 1970, I want to say. Yeah, 1970. Chris Ritchie says that's his favourite. Matt Ludi, Tony, would they have to get permission to use the rights to the uniforms due to them being so accurate? I don't think it's the rights. They certainly got like permission from the regiments, and actually I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment because that's really how this range started to expand. So the first one was the Grenadier Guard. I'll give you guys a closer look. So the Grenadier Guard, he comes with an SLR rifle. He's got his come back a little bit. He's got his bearskin helmet there. You can see on the back, like all the gorgeous buttons on the back of his uniform. There's the bayonet scabbard and what's called a frog. The frog is the white section that holds the scabbard onto the belt. And that bayonet on the rifle is actually removable and it can go into the scabbard. A beautiful, beautiful uniform. And while I'm talking about this, so the Grenadier Guard was one of the few ceremonials that Palitoy continued to release throughout Action Man's production run, where the lifeguards and everything else was only available sort of a year or maybe 2 years that it first came out. The Grenadier Guard, they continued to release with slight modifications. So I have here, this is probably from around 1976. So here we've got a carded Grenadier Guard uniform. Got this couple of the stars cut out the bottom there. This is what we call a locker box card. And actually when they made this, they Palitoy used cheaper, thinner materials, and that's basically how the variations go along. Now, in my collection, I normally only like to get the first issue of a uniform. I'm not interested in getting all the different variations with different types of material and stuff, unless it's an outfit I'm particularly fond, like the Parachute Regiment. I've got as many versions of the Parachute Regiment as possible. But certainly with the Grenadier Guard, I happen to, and actually, I've just remembered, I was speaking about Dave Lebec before. I'm pretty sure I bought this off him, off an Action Man forum years ago, via a postal purchase, not in person. Dave Lebec has contributed quite a bit to my ceremonials. So unless Palitoy change a uniform dramatically, I tend to only go and try and get the first issue version of it. I'm not too concerned about getting later versions. And I mean, if you take something like the mine detection set, the 60s mine detection set is vastly different to the mine detection set that came out on the wood grain box in the mid-70s, probably around 76, 77. Because that's vastly different, I wanted to get both examples. So, Jody S. always wondered why that vehicle, the Batmobile, is at an angle in your display. You've always wondered why it's at an angle. Because I'm like, it's an art gallery, my man. I'm propping it up on a pedestal. I just think when you, probably from this angle with the camera, it's not quite so good. But when you're actually standing in this room and walking around, you can actually see it better. Let's try something just for Jody because he sent me some super chats. Does that look better or not? Let me know your opinion. See, I think it looks better elevated, but yeah. It's running the Joker over. No, he's got the handbrake on. He's not going anywhere. The Joker's good. So what do we think? Is that better like that? Or should it be propped up on the stand? King Eric the Great the First looks fine either way. Yeah, thanks, man. So this was, as I said, the first ceremonial uniform or famous British regiment's uniform that Palitoy produced. Yeah, a lot of people saying they like it propped up. I don't need to move bats by the driver's door because there's another Batman in there and there's a Batman carded behind. I've got a few Batmans. I like Batman. Can you have it both propped up and level at the same time? Yeah, I can manage that. Oh, Jody, I know you weren't saying that there was anything wrong with man. I just, you gave me some super chats and you were curious, so I thought I'd show you the other way, I certainly don't think you were saying anything wrong, man. All right, so we've discussed the Grenadier Guard, and I should say that I'm going to try and quote Bob Breakin here from the documentary. These sold like hotcakes. I think that was the expression he used. These uniforms sold really, really well. King Eric the Great the First, Tony, do you have any pictures of yourself in a dress uniform? A couple, my man, but I've got to be honest, I never wore a dress uniform very often. I spent most of my career in combat fatigues. Yeah, so the Grenadier Guards, according to Bob, sold like hotcakes, and not just according to Bob. I'm pretty sure he's correct because they're probably one of the easiest ceremonials to get, mainly because they aren't as breakable as the others. Some of the other uniforms are incredibly fragile. But following the Grenadier Guard, we then get to the Argyll and Sutherland Highlander, which is just a beautiful uniform. He's got his quite rare sporran at the front, his kilt, his socks, his puttees, his tunic. I don't remember what they call that type of headdress. The name escapes me. Let's show you. Once again, he's got a bayonet and scabbard in a frog. That frog is different to the one on the Grenadier and is very, very difficult to acquire today. Scuba Pete, amazing detail. Yes, amazing detail. This is one of my favourites. Actually, there's a collector. I don't know what Facebook page he's on. It might be the Vintage Action Man Collector's Facebook page. But there's a collector in the UK who is army building these, and his photos are incredible. He's got, I want to say, like almost a platoon of these guys, and it looks amazing, all done up like that. That American Kid, why is it that most action men have lifelike hair? Well, lifelike hair was the first innovation. The first innovation was actually the talking command, the talking action man or talking G.I. Joe. But that was a Hasbro. What's the word? My brain's not working this morning. Sorry. That was the first innovation developed by Hasbro. The first innovation developed by Palitoy in 1970 was the lifelike hair, the flocked hair. Because Palitoy were aware that Action Man needed a new hook kind of every 2 to 3 years to keep people interested and to keep the Action Man figures fresh and exciting. So we started off with the Talking Commander in like 68 or something like that. In 70 we got the Lifelike Air. In 73 we got Gripping Hands. Then we got Eagle Eyes. Then we got the Dynamic Physique. And then we got the Sharpshooter Neck Position. And it goes on like that. Reluctant Warrior, good afternoon from Florida. Good to see you, my man. That's a cool name, the Reluctant Warrior. Is there a story behind that? Timothy Ward, the Ferguson side of my family approves of the kill. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and it's good. For anyone who saw my recent Palatalk episode with Michael French, he asked me about the Action Man footballers, and I said that they had knobbly knees. Well, they all have knobbly knees, but they're all disguised. And even though he's in a kilt, his socks are high enough that you can't quite see his knobbly knees. I'm not going to lift up the kilt because we know that Scotsmen don't wear underwear under their kilts. So the story behind the Argyll and Sutherland Highlander is that following the massive success of the Grenadier Guard in 1917, if I get any of these years wrong, I apologise, but I'm pretty sure that Grenadier was 70 and then this came out in 71. And what actually happened, there was a man named Bill Pugh. Now, Bill Pugh is really the father of Action Man. He was so where Bob Breakin was the chief designer, Bill Pugh was the director of design, research and development for Palitoy. He was an ex-naval officer and someone that everyone at Palitoy really they speak of him with a lot of reverence. I certainly really look up to him. Unfortunately, we lost Bill in the early 90s, or the mid-90s, I believe. So I've never had the opportunity to meet Bill, and I certainly would have interviewed him for my documentary if it was possible. But what Bill did back in 1971 is, following the success of the Grenadier Guard, he travelled up to Stirling, I think it's Stirling Castle in Scotland, which has the Highlanders, or the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders Museum there. He travelled to the museum and he borrowed a dress uniform from them, and then turned up, I think, on a Monday morning at the Palitoy office in Colville, Leicestershire. And Bob said that they were going to some sort of like a staff meeting, and Bill Pugh walked in wearing the full uniform, the kilt, the sporran, the spats. I think maybe he had bagpipes, although they never made bagpipes. He came into this meeting dressed in the full uniform, and he's like, I think we need to make the Argyll and Sutherland Highlander, which they then did. It's one of the rarer sets. I don't know if this possibly only sold for 1 year, but it is a fantastic uniform and a real prize piece in any Action Man collector's collection or display, whatever you call it. That American Kid, I need a new G.I. Joe. Is there any particular G.I. Joe you're looking for? The Full Force podcast says that he could cosplay that. I'd like to see that, man. I'm going to throw out the challenge. The gauntlet has been laid down. Resolute 123, with the Black Watch of War something similar? Yeah, look, I'm not an expert on Scottish regiments. The Black Watch, obviously, what do they call it on the pattern on the kilt? Is it the tartan? That would have been slightly different. I think the main difference with the Black Watch is they wore a very different style of headdress. It's kind of like a beret, but it has a sort of pom-pom on the top. If I'm getting this wrong, guys, don't shoot me. I'm not an expert on Scottish regiments. I'm just not. Man of Action. I thought that those Brit uniforms were like one-offs. Did they sell them in your stores over there at the time? How much did they go for retail? I don't know what they went for retail. Like, these were sold in like 70, 71. But they were just sold as toys. I believe they were probably quite popular in shops around London with the for tourists. Like even now, you go everywhere around London, there are souvenir shops all over the place that sell toy soldiers and teddy bears dressed as Grenadier Guards and all that. And I imagine these would have sold very, very well around London at the time. King Eric the Great the First, Resolute 123, yeah, yes, but different cap badge and different tartan, yeah, and I believe a different headdress. I don't believe they wore, but I may be wrong. King Eric the Great the First seems to know a bit more. Shame about the British Royal Guard is difficult to come by at a decent price, so it's pretty much the rule with vintage toys to any extent. Yes, the Reluctant Warrior is talking about how it's difficult to come by these at a decent price. Because they've been, but with these uniforms, the prices continue to rise because not only are they vintage, but they are incredibly popular. They look amazing, which is why all collectors want them. But they're also very, very fragile, particularly the Blues and Roars and the Lifeguard. So I suppose we'll start talking about the Blues and Roars and the Lifeguard. So, winding back to an earlier comment around did Palitoy get the rights to the uniform? No, they got permission. But after they had made the Grenadier Guard and the Argyle and Sutherland Highlander, which I think on both occasions Palitoy approached those regiments saying they wanted to make the uniform. Well, following that, Bob says that basically everything turned around and the Lifeguards actually came to Palitoy and said, well, we want an action man of our uniform. Why don't you make a Lifeguard uniform? So they promptly did, and they went down to the Household Cavalry Barracks in London and decided, and it would have made perfect sense for them to make both the Blues and Royals and the Lifeguard, because the uniforms are pretty much the same, just with different colours. So once they had the tooling to make one, they could make the other. The carded 40th anniversary ceremonials are excellent display pieces. Yeah, they are. I used to have them. I purchased the 40th anniversary ones when they first came out. But then a number of years ago, I think when I was about 5 years ago, when I was moving up to Port Hedland, I decided to pretty much get rid of all of the 40th anniversary stuff in my collection, and I sold it all to a friend of mine named Dean Martin, lives down in Perth. So this uniform here, this is exquisite. He has a sword and sabre. The sword is actually a sword and sabre, a sabre and scabbard. The sword is removable. This one is missing a piece of the handguard, but I've got it on the Blues and Royals there. It's got tall boots with spurs. The belt, the helmet and plume. On the back, I believe that black pouch is called a cartouche. It's like an ammo pouch kind of thing. George Aitken says, what is the breastplate made of? It's made of vac metallized plastic. Very, very difficult to get in good condition because the chroming comes off. This version here is actually a much better example than the one I've got here. This one, there's some marks on the front of it. It's not brilliant. And actually, I'm just going to get up for a minute. I forgot something. Don't knock anything over, Tony. Yes, now you drink. Okay. I had to go and grab this guy here. So he's the Blues and Royal. He doesn't have a figure stand, so I hope he doesn't really fall over. Jody, yes, to restore chrome, Molotow liquid chrome pens are amazing. Yes, they are, Jody, but for some reason I've never wanted to restore this. Like, it's not that bad that it's not display. I mean, look at this guy. This one does not need any repair. This one probably needs a little bit of chrome touch up, but it looks that good that I just don't want to mess around with it, because these uniforms are so fragile. Even when you're handling them, you can snap off spurs and plumes and all sorts of stuff. So the reason I got this Blues and Royals figure here, because as you can see, this guy doesn't come with the breastplates. So Palitoy sold these outfits in a number of different there's lots of packaging, a number of different packaging variations. So the basic carded uniform was like this. It didn't come with the breastplates. He does have the cartouche on the back. Give you guys a good look at that. So the carded outfit was sold like that without the breastplate armor. Then they did a deluxe boxed figure. So not just a carded outfit, but the uniform with a figure. I don't know if they did the Blues and Royals. They certainly did the Lifeguard. That one came packed in with the breastplate armor. You could also buy the breastplate armor separately on a small card. And then also you could buy the horse, which I'll talk about in a moment. You could buy the horse on its own with just a saddle. You could buy it with dress saddlery, or you could buy it complete with a lifeguard uniform, including the breastplate. So there was a number of different ways to get the breastplates, but the basic carded outfits did not include them, that's why I like the Blues and Royals. That's why I've got 2 of them, but I like to sort of display the 2 different ways that they were available with and without breastplates. I'm gonna have to put that guy down for a minute. Because he doesn't have a figure stand, I'm worried. You know me, I'm knocking stuff over all the time. Chris Ritchie, from this angle, they look perfect. Yeah, they do. Hard hand Action Man, easy to put gauntlets on the gripping hands. Yeah, that's correct. So the fixed hand Action Man's figures are easy for the gaunt. I think most of these I've got on fixed hands. So I can't tell what's in that. That's definitely fixed hand. I can't tell about that one. Yeah, they're all fixed hand examples here. I don't have any gripping hands. I'm a bit I'm a bit of a I'm a bit funny like that with Action Man. If a uniform came out in 1971, it has to go on the Action Man that was available at that time. I can't put these with gripping hands because the gripping hands Action Man didn't come out for a couple of years later. And I believe these 2, the Blues and Royals and the Lifeguard, came out in 1972. So we've got 1970, 71 for the Argyle, and then 72 for the Lifeguards. The gloves kind of look like oven mitts. Yeah, they do. Chris Ritchie, so why no breastplate on the card? Was that just a price thing? I believe so, yeah. Because I think most of the famous British uniforms, carded outfits, like the Parachute Regiment, you know, they kind of sold them all at the same price. And with all the extra pieces in there, it would have cost a bit more, so... Gary's Action Man channel says 40th breastplate looks better than the original. Oh, I'm going to disagree with you, Gary. I don't think I've had the 40th breastplate. Yes, that looks far shinier and newer, but there's something about the chrome. It's too chrome compared to the vintage. I also the vintage, I don't know what they call them, like the gold straps that go over the top. They just look far better than the 40th anniversary. Can they hold the saber with those gloves? Yes, they can, Jody. Let's give this a crack. There you go. Just for you, Jody. Mark says, good to see you again, sir. Do you have an Action Man Canadian Mountie? Yes, I do have an Action Man Canadian Mountie in the cabinet over there. But I don't really class that as part of the ceremonials, because the ceremonials were always British uniforms. So I didn't get... Although the Mountie does look good among these, I actually display my Mountie with my Arctic troop... with my Polar Explorers and Mountaineers. I think he looks better on that shelf. It's also a 60s outfit and goes well with that stuff. Oh no, Meet the Co-owner said that he had to sell his Robo Skull due to the depression. That's a terrible shame, my man. But, you know, hopefully you're able to reacquire one later on. So let's get that back away. Don't want to, in case he drops it. Resolute 123. Being clothes figures, do you do anything to extend the life of the uniform? Beyond keeping them in glass cabinets, not really. I have lighting in my cabinets, but very, very rarely turn on the lighting. Yeah, I think that's all you can do. Climate controlled environment, you know, it's, I've got an air conditioner and it's like a dehumidifier as well. Keep any humidity and moisture out of the room. And beyond that, actually, the uniforms are actually not something I particularly worry about. It's rubber is the worst. Rubber rifle slings, rubber connectors in the neck posts of the later issue figures. Yep, stay away from. Yeah, these things haven't seen sunlight in many years, if ever. Actually, if ever. Okay, let's get to the horse. So when that's just a work of art, isn't it? That is just gorgeous. So as I said, the horse was available with a basic black saddle and then also with all the dress regalia. And this horse was sculpted by Bill Pugh, who I mentioned before, Palatoy's Director of Design, Research and Development. Because when they were developing the Lifeguard and the Blues and Royals uniforms, they're like, hey, like these are cavalry soldiers, these are mounted soldiers. We need to develop a horse. So apparently, Bill Pugh went home one weekend with a big lump of clay and came in on the Monday morning with a sculpted horse. Someone was asking me yesterday if they ever wanted to articulate this. I don't know if that was anything they ever discussed. They certainly didn't. I think they just went for the static horse. Possibly because it was designed to go with these uniforms, and these aren't really toys that you play with. These are kind of more toys that you display. So I don't think it needed articulation, so to speak. But it's got, just like the plumes on the helmets, it's got faux hair tail and mane. Just looks absolutely stunning. Really stunning. I believe later on in the Action Man line, they also is that Bob Breakin in the house? Is it Bob B? I don't know. I don't know. It's pretty late in the UK. If that is Bob. Awesome to have you here if it is. Bob often watches the replays of these because of the time that I air them. So the horses come in different colours. So when the horses were first released, they were black. That was the only colour to get them in. But then later on in the Action Man range, when they started to do like the Wild West outfits, so the 7th Cavalry, they did an Indian Scout, and I believe the horse was brown. But I don't own one of those. I don't have one of those in my collection. Gorgeous. I absolutely love it. Beautiful, beautiful toy. Okay. Now we get to the 17th, 21st Lancers. This is another personal favourite of mine. I really like this uniform design. It's incredible. He's got the skull and crossbones on the flag on his lance there. The lance comes in 2 pieces. I believe it came in 2 pieces just so that they could fit it into the packaging better, but unfortunately that made it quite fragile, as the connector often there's like a peg on the end of one piece and a hole in the other, like a male and female joint, and the peg often breaks off. So I think one of these is good and the other one's not, and when I talk about the other one, it's because I have 2. I also like to display my 17th, 21st Lancer on a horse. Because how can you have a Lancer that's not on a horse, eh? So as you can see, this one here does not have all of the ceremonial add-ons on the bridle. This is just the basic saddle and reins on this one here. Very, very intricate uniform once again. Saddle, spurs, the yellow cord that actually runs from the back of his helmet, which I believe if I don't know if it's called a lanyard or not, but I'm actually trying to figure out how to set up all the yellow cord correctly for me was really difficult. I had to study a lot of images to try and understand it, and I believe the real life Lancers use this rope for a number of things. Basically, if their helmet came off in battle, it was tied on by this lanyard and would hold on. But they also could use it for, like, tying up prisoners and whatnot. I actually believe it was a functional addition to the uniform as well as a decorative one. But again, I'm no expert, certainly not on Lancers. Bobby L. Collins says the Gabriel Lone Ranger horses would look great with these Lancers if they were only to scale. Yeah, but also I think the Action Man horse is slightly undersized. Like, this is a pretty small horse considering how tall Action Man is. They get away with it, but I think in real life it would have been a little bit bigger, maybe a half an inch taller or something. Gary's Action Man channel says the cord line fixing is very fragile. Yeah, there's actually a hook on the top of the uniform just here in the corner, and there's a plastic loop around the cord lines that hooks onto that hook, and they're often broken. That one's good. Mine are both good. I'm very lucky. Actually, just looking here, I think these spurs might be their 40th anniversary on this particular one. The others are all original. Yeah, their 40th anniversary spurs. Do you measure them in gripping hands? No, gripping hands hadn't been invented yet. We measure them in fixed hands. Kieran Ball, is that a ginger bearded Action Man? It's a custom reflock. They never made a ginger bearded Action Man, but I got a figure custom reflocked because, and I think at one point I actually had the Argyle and Sutherland Highlander because I thought being Scottish and ginger, I don't know. But yeah, it's they never sold original Action Man figures like that. It's an original head that I sent away to a reflocking service and got them to reflock it in ginger, and I thought it looks pretty cool on this particular toy. Vintage Toy Rush. Did children or adults buy these uniforms back in the day? I think both, man. I think they sold a lot of this kind of thing in and around London to tourists who wanted a souvenir of their time in Britain. But there were still young boys who wanted these kind of uniforms. I remember being a kid. I was not born in the era of the ceremonials. But I did have a Grenadier Guard uniform because, as I said, that continued to be sold throughout. I had a Grenadier Guard uniform when I was a kid, and weirdly, I also at one point had a West Point Cadet uniform, which I believe, which was a G.I. Joe uniform that they never sold in the UK, but I believe it was a Guyperman, or Shepperman, if you pronounce it correctly, from Spain. I believe it was that. I'm not sure. Somehow I acquired a West Point Cadet uniform. And I still enjoyed those when I was a kid, the Grenadier Guard and the West Point Cadet. I would enjoy dressing my Action Man in a dress uniform and, and displaying it on the shelf when I wasn't playing with it. Then when I went to play with it, he would come out of the dress uniform and he'd go back to being a paratrooper or something like that. So, George Aitken says the closest he got was Britain's Toy Soldiers. Yeah, I've mentioned many times before, my dad's a collector of toy soldiers, particularly Britain's Toy Soldiers. I have a decent collection downstairs. Yeah, I want to get some more. Particularly, I really want to get some more of the Britain's detail. I've got the Germans and the Brits. I'd really like to acquire some of the others. The German Africa Corps would be pretty cool. Okay. Now, what else have we got to show you? Let's see. Can anyone in the chat tell me if there is another uniform that people might consider a ceremonial outfit that I haven't shown you yet? Because technically, to me, I've shown you now all of the... This is the thing with the term ceremonials. Ceremonials is just a label given to these uniforms by collectors. And some people, as someone mentioned before about the Canadian Mountie, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, some people could fit this in here as well. But to me, these are the famous British regiments' dress uniforms. And then also you have the combat uniforms. Gary's Action Man channel, I knew you were going to get it, my man. The Royal Hussar. And here we have the Royal Hussar. This uniform came out a number of years after the others. I don't remember how many, like 3 or 4 years after. So I think the Lancer was the last of the dress British uniforms in around 72. This one came out around 75, 76, something like that. And although this is a British uniform, it was never sold on a card back with the title Famous British Regiments, like all the others did. Jody S. A retro blasting and analog toys combined logo shirt. That co-op deserves a celebration. Yes, definitely. I can take the logos from the Palatalk episode thumbnail and put them on a t-shirt, but I certainly, if I was going to do that, I would want to be splitting the any profits of selling t-shirts. I'd want to be splitting with the retro blasting crew. I'm not going to take money using their logo. Action Man from the 90s did a range of James Bond figures in uniforms and costumes for the movies. Yeah, they did. And I would actually, I was a teenager then. I wasn't really into toys, but I was a teenager. Was I a teenager? Yeah, but like a teenager who's working. That's 18, 19, when Action Man came out in the 90s. And I do believe I picked up a couple of the James Bond ones. I definitely had the GoldenEye figure. Not sure which of the others. I think they did about 4 or 5. I've been very tempted to go back and reacquire those James Bond figures to make a video about. But I'm not too keen on 90s Action Man. But I think if I was going to get any 90s Action Man and make a video about any of the 90s Action Man, it would be the James Bond ones. Gary's Action Man channel said there is a case for classing Royal Military Police and the Army officer as ceremonials. Yeah, there is, but this is what I mean, Gary. Like the ceremonials is just a label that collectors have given them. I prefer to, these to me are famous British regiments, which the British officer and the Royal Military Police are part of that same line of products that Palitoy was releasing, the famous British regiment. So I think whether you consider them ceremonials, it's just down to everyone's individual opinion, and nobody's right or wrong. It's just like, how do you pronounce Adat? Like, no one's right or wrong. If someone says that the British officer is a ceremonial, then it is to them. It's Jody S. Did they ever make Star Trek uniforms that would look amazing? No, they didn't. But Mego did do 12-inch Star Trek figures from Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and they're in the same scale. And I believe I had a Captain Kirk 12-inch Mego figure from Star Trek: The Motion Picture when I was a kid. and I believe the figure broke, and then I actually did at one point dress one of my Action Man figures in Captain Kirk's uniform because it was the same scale. I think at one point I also had, so like the 12-inch Superman there, can you see that? I believe when I was a kid I also dressed an Action Man one time in a Superman outfit. But there you go. I think a 95th Rifles Action Man would be awesome. Yep, it certainly would. Badre Bally, hey, how are things in Australia? We're doing good here, my man. Well, me personally, me and my family, we're all good. So, the Royal Hussar. Let's continue talking about the Royal Hussar. So yeah, so this was a later edition, which is why this guy's got the gripping hands, not the fixed hand, because by the time his uniform came out, it had gripping hands. So I'm a bit pedantic like that. This is a beautiful uniform. Like that cross belt is just amazing. The cartouche has got a like a faux metal cover on it. It's got spurs on the shoes, a sword. The British officer's cap in a maroon colour. George Aitken says, did they do historical Action Man outfits like Waterloo? No, they didn't. Probably the closest we ever came to anything like that is the 17th, 21st Lancer. Chris Ritchie says, stunning attention to detail. I can't think of any other toy that did that. No, man, there was no other toy line that did that. Well, I suppose G.I. Joe did to a degree, you know. They did, back in the 60s, you had the West Point Cadet, the Annapolis Cadet, the Dress Marine, and what Air Force one did they do? I can't remember the name of it. But, you know, and they were doing it before Action Man, really. They were doing that in the late 60s. But I think these kind of took things to a new level because those G.I. Joe uniforms, you know, they didn't have vac metalized breastplates and ornate helmets and plumes and all this kind of thing. So one interesting thing with the Royal Hussar, you can see here that the sword and scabbard is attached to a belt that you can't see, right? The belt is worn underneath the tunic. A lot of collectors, excuse me, a lot of collectors display this uniform with the belt on the outside of the tunic because it's a gold or brassy looking belt. It looks really, really ornate. It's very beautiful. But that's not correct. Like the actual way this uniform is worn by the real Royal Hussars, it is worn underneath the tunic. So if any of you have this in your collection and you've got the belt on the outside, you know, and I'm not nitpicking here. What I'm saying is this is the way the real Royal Hussars wear their uniforms. They wear them with the belt underneath the tunic. So that is the correct way to wear it from a military perspective. King Eric the Great the First. Sorry, Resolute 123's thanking him for a comment that I missed somewhere. That American Kid, they did it in 1964. Now, G.I. Joe came out in 1964. I don't think the West Point Cadets and stuff came out till around 66 or 67. But I may be wrong. Most 12-inch Mego figures now suffer from the dreaded grey head disease. Yes, they do. Although, Superman doesn't. I know, like, the Star Trek motion picture guys and the James Bond Moonraker figures do, but I don't think I've ever seen a Superman whose head has greyed. So, Gary's Action Man channel. This outfit only works properly on dynamic physique figures. What do you mean, Gary? What is that? This is not a dynamic physique figure. I'm not sure what you mean. George Aitken says, I'm painting Scots Grey figures for a guy. Ah, the tailoring, Gary's saying. Oh, So I'm assuming like you mean like the waist fits a dynamic physique figure better and all that. But probably, yeah. These I do sort of struggle to keep the trousers held up on this, which but the use of this figure stand does assist in keeping everything where it should be in the right place. Tony, can the figure stand fit under the jacket? Yes, it can. It can. When this came out of the cabinet, it wasn't on a figure stand. I put it on a figure stand to use on the table, just because I know I've knocked over a few toys in the past. If I knocked over any of these toys, these would not survive as well as some of the other things I've knocked over. Like I was at Red Sleeves, I knocked over in the Lone Ranger live stream, and he was absolutely fine. But if I knocked over a lifeguard, I would just have an emotional breakdown on live on YouTube. Chris Ritchie, do you try to match outfits with action men from that era, or you're not fussy? No, I'm very fussy, which is why I think this one may not be quite correct. I'm trying to think when this outfit came out and whether this should be on an Eagle Eye figure or not. But I think because I put this in the cabinet and display it with all the others, so all the others, these are all fixed hand flopped hair figures, because all of the other ceremonial uniforms came out between 70 and 72 before gripping hands. So this guy's got gripping hands, but I think the reason I've chosen gripping hands and the flopped hair painted eye is because he sits in the cabinet with all the others, and I think putting an Eagle Eye figure in amongst these really makes it stand out. But otherwise, yes, I am very, very pedantic about it. I just can't bring myself to dress a 60s uniform on an Eagle Eye figure. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with other people doing that. That's fine. It's just not the way I like to display my Action Man stuff. It's also why I don't do a lot of customizing. I like to display the majority of my collection, be it Action Man or anything else. I want to display toys the way that they were originally sold. So I don't put many add-ons to any Action Man uniforms. Just the way it came off the card, I dress it like that, and that's the way it's displayed. With a few exceptions, I'd have customized a little bit of stuff, but that's why I'm not heavily into it. I'm more into being historically accurate with the way the toy was released, having all the correct accessories the way it was sold. George Aitken says, it's a shame that Action Man didn't do Action Force uniforms. Yeah, it is. That is something I would like to customise. I would like to make a custom Z-Force captain with the red beret. Resolute 123. Were these ceremonials really meant for playing? They just seem too nice. Yeah, I do think they were. You need to remember that when these were being sold in the early 70s, you know, this was a time when toy soldiers was very, very popular in the UK, you know, lead and miniature metal soldiers. And they sold tons and tons of ceremonial style soldiers. I think, you know, I don't think a boy would take these kind of uniforms into the backyard and actually have them have a sword fight. But certainly I remember being a young kid, and a lot of the, you know, I would sometimes act out like a play scenario with Action Man, but then other times I would just be setting up bases, almost like creating my own dioramas in the backyard. You know, I wasn't exactly playing with them. I was posing them, I was displaying them, and these are the perfect Action Man to do that kind of thing with. So, all right, I've gone through pretty much all of the ceremonials now. I'm going to have to move a couple out of the way here because we've got a parcel to open. We've got a box here, I believe from Jody. So, let's see what's in the box. I think I know. Jody did mention it. This not only took a while to arrive, but also it arrived at the so it went to the post office, and it took me ages to get down to the post office and get a chance to pick it up. So let's see what Jody sent us. Gary's Action Man channel. Wasn't there a planned ceremonial for the Hussar? But the intricate gold braiding in the tunic made production unpractical. Yes, they did. Have I just confused myself? What's the name of this outfit again? That's the Royal Hussar? I've just confused myself. Yeah, there was another planned ceremonial uniform that never came off. Yeah, that's the Royal Hussar. I can't remember the name of it now. My brain's just been turned inside out lately. I don't know what's going on. I'm not sleeping very well. George Aitken says, is it ticking the box? No, it's not. Yeah, there was another planned ceremonial uniform that didn't come off. And if you want to learn about that, go back and watch part 2 of my Story of Action Man documentary. It's in there. Okay. Very simple from Jody, as promised. What have we got here? Wrapping. Open it. Yes, American Kid. I am opening it. I'm getting there, my man. And we have... Who recognises that? That is the laser cannon from the SAS Panther. Functions, all correct. Now the reason Jody sent this to me is because, and thank you very much Jody, I appreciate this. Jody noticed that one of the guns on my SAS Panther was slightly bent. And it just so happened that Jody had an SAS Panther when he was a kid, and this is the only remaining piece. He doesn't have any other part of the Panther than this. So he wanted to send this to me so that I can swap it out for the bent gun on my SAS Panther. So thank you very, very much, Jody. And because this has come from your childhood collection, I will treasure this. This will be going into the Action Force display and remaining there forevermore. So, all right, guys. That pretty much concludes the live stream. We've talked about all the Action Man ceremonials. Apologies for me stuttering and stumbling my way through this morning. I don't know what's going on. I didn't sleep that well last night, and I got up very early, and this is only my second cup of tea. I probably need to go and have another one, and I can't even finish it because I've got a little bug in there now. Tiny little flying things falling in my tea. Damn it. Okay, yeah. Thank you all for watching, guys. I hope you're all keeping safe and well in wherever you are. I'm very lucky to be living where I'm living. I'm not even going to talk about the pandemic. I don't want to bring it into the chat at all. I just hope you're all keeping safe and well. You're looking after your families, and yeah, I've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed chatting with you guys on the stream again, and stay tuned for Action Force Part 3. Will be dropping in less than 24 hours, in 23 hours from now, it will go public on YouTube. But if you want early access to Action Force Part 3 on the Space Force, and I'm very proud of this video. I'm really pleased with the way it turned out. I did something a little bit different with the photography on this one, like the way I showed the space toys, and I was very happy with the way it turned out. Timothy Ward says, at least you noticed the fly before you drank. Yeah, I am lucky. Here in Australia, that often happens. If I have a beer out on the balcony, and you go inside of the bathroom, and you come back out, and you pick your beer up, and there's a fly in there. So it's a common occurrence. I would have reacted quite well had it have gone wrong anyway. So I'm very, very proud of Action Force Part 3. So if you want to get early access to that video, you can by signing up to the Patreon page. So just Google www.patreon.com and then search creators under Analog Toys. Very simple. So, and also the next video, the next cab off the rank, I suppose, is more than likely going to be the top 10 vintage Star Wars vehicles, which I've started writing the script on. I'll probably finish it off today and try and get that done over the weekend. So we're going to do a top 10 on the vintage Star Wars vehicles. So cool. All right. Thank you all for watching, guys. I hope you're staying safe and well. And I'll see you in the next video. Cheers. Now I've got to get up and turn it off.